Hi there. For Gnosticism, or strictly speaking, for Gnostics living in the modern world or in this world, there is a paradox central to the perception that Gnosticism generates. On one hand, this world is as bad as it gets, and on the other, it's 60% not bad, because if you think of the three modes of existence, creation, preservation, and destruction. Well, creation, creativity, and preservation, preserving, are 60% good, and only 30% the destruction part is bad. Whatever you mean by good and bad, and in any case, the 30% destruction mode is there for perhaps a good reason, ultimately, as far as this world is concerned. But that kind of lies outside this video entirely, or there are other videos that allude to this and talk about this. Um, but anyway, in any case, I suppose if you're the person who is suffering and you're in the 30% destruction mode, either self-destruction or people being destructive towards you, or your environment is being destructive towards you, then I guess I guess it's 100% bad. This world is as bad as it gets. But to the Gnostic, even when they're in the creative creation preservation modes, they know, hence the word gnosis, that this world is as bad as it gets because it is a place where the soul is imprisoned, or at least restrained, or at least encumbered in some way. And I've already looked at this thing. The question: is this world a schoolroom? Is it a corrective facility? Is it a torture chamber? And I suppose in many ways it's probably all three. Again, depending on your perception, depending on your experience. But nowadays, we tend to think that people's experience is their truth. So if your experience is negative, then that's sort of the truth. And if your experience is positive, that is also the truth. But I suppose from a Gnostic point of view, that's not sufficient. We need to kind of argue from philosophical premises and in a philosophical way. Is to answer the question: is this world as bad as it gets, or is it not that bad, or does it depend? And of course, you look at this world as a homogeneous entity or existential phenomenon, or even focus for perception. And of course, it breaks down to at least four different categories, which I've outlined here. And you're probably way ahead of me because you can read all these, whereas I can't. Uh, and basically, I've categorized them again, as is my want, as far as air, fire, water, and earth, which are the kind of metaphysical constructs of the universe, apart from ether, which we'll talk about a little bit later, if we have time. But so the thing is, if we look at air, we see the world as an if only world. And I have the if only world. I mean, there are many characteristics of this if only world, and I've only kind of listed a few of them here, really. And for example, there are some interesting examples that stand out here. Ones I've written down. For example, if only all options were one. I think one of the problems with our modern day world is that we have so many options, that we end up being totally confused and sort of not able to make a decision, or not able to do anything, which is depressing on one hand. But of course, it's all the options are there, from a commercial point of view, to make us buy everything that's going around. and buy all products and services because you can't choose which one to buy. We sort of end up buying all of them and sort of going from one to the other, which is good for the economy, isn't it, overall? And but I have a kind of thing about this because a lot of digital audio workstation related music software is based on drop down menus and giving you millions of options. And I can't ever decide. It's not the way I compose music. I compose music by following my unconscious, which basically has a set of options that I follow, even though I don't know what the options are beforehand. I end up falling into following them. And each piece of music has its own options, which my unconscious has already decided on. So I'm just here to rubber stamp them, really. But if I look at some software, as I say, all these drop down menus and all these options and all these yes, too much. I'm confused. I don't do anything in the end, and I don't know which product to buy, or which service to buy into, and I end up, as I say, either not buying anything or buying all of it, and having a load of stuff on my hard drive, which is completely obsolete or not used, or and that would be the same for hardware if I could afford it. Have loads of keyboards hanging around the room which are never used because I can't decide which one to use. And I keep interfering with my unconscious mind, which has already decided what it's going to do for a piece of music, and I just keep interfering with the process, which makes me very depressed and frustrated and furious and angry and fed up and hate myself and all that. So there's a list of here if onlys, and an interesting one is if only the world as it is in my media head. And related to that, if only I really liked the virtual world I'm building for myself. With social media, do I really like being part of this matrix of social media? Or do I get really claustrophobic sometimes and wish I could just escape and go off grid and offline and get away from all these friends that I have on social media? Um, and sometimes all these friends, who needs enemies, eh? Anyway, but that's another story. I don't know. There's a whole list. There's more. Those are the ones that stand out to me because I've just done this recently. Added to the list rather. I like this one. I wish the beer glass was not half empty. Now, that's a matter of perception, isn't it? You're seeing the world as a half empty beer glass and wishing it wasn't half empty, but you could, if you saw it as being half full, then maybe you wouldn't want it full to the brim because you'd be satisfied with what you had. But so we have all this if only world we build up mostly in our minds and our perceptions, in our desires and our frustrated desires, and all this leads to frustration and fantasy. We build up this fantasy world. There's a very good, brilliant a brilliant play called on BBC, which is called Pennies from Heaven, and it's about this bloke who fills his minds up with the old songs, the old time songs, and all the romantic songs, and his whole life is a complete mess, and his relationship with his wife is a total mess, and he's a pedophile as well. And ends up, well, I won't spoil it, but anyway, and basically, his life is a mess, but he's propping up his consciousness with all these songs and the fantasies that they produce in his mind. And he's out of touch with reality. He's out of touch with himself. He's out of touch with other people. And his life is a complete failure. But he just props himself up, as I said, with the songs. And when things get rough in the play during the play, the play suddenly breaks out into song. No one starts singing and dancing, like as if like he's perceiving the world as a crap place, and then suddenly it flips over and he's in a fantasy world of his own. And so we live in this if only world, and there are various aspects of this only, of these of this if only quality of this world, which I've listed here. So now we go on to let contrast this with this world grounded. So we're grounded in this world, and suddenly, things don't look so bad because we're doing things, little things that count on the practical level. We're cultivating what Rudolf Steiner called practical energy. And you can see a list of the characteristics here, which are only the partial list, really. Practicing in order to make perfect. I mean, that's a really interesting thing. You won't get perfect, but at least you should practice. At least you should have the goal, and practice away in order to get better, and you will see yourself getting better at things as a result of practice, practice, practice. And I'm a very lazy person. I never practice, so then I never get better at anything. So then I get frustrated with myself because I don't practice, and then I don't see any improvement in my piano playing, whatever. So if I practice more, I'd be, I get a better deal from that. Focused on the here and now, being present in the body, the breath, the physical body, um, seeing one's children grow. I mean, by children, I mean everything from physical children to the flowers and plants that you may be growing in your garden, or the work that you're doing on your house or something. You can see things getting better as a result of grounding yourself in the here and now, and in the physical and in the practical. So, in many ways, Gnosticism sort of is honor bound to completely embrace the sort of Gurdjieff attitude towards the material world, which is to completely immerse yourself and ground yourself in the things that need doing on the practical level. And that's completely different from living in a fantasy world, an if only world, a world of uh, realities that can never be manifest, or which are only manifest and will fall apart at some later date. And here you're building something. You're seating your house on a rock and not on sand, kind of thing. Um, so that's kind of a positive contrast when you're grounded in the earth rather than living in an if only world, and you're sort of getting your your fingers dirty instead of your head dirty. Do you know what I mean? I'll leave that analogy right alone. So then we come on to fire, which is like not doing what your unconscious tells you, but doing what your appetites tell you, and then justifying it afterwards by some sort of ad hoc justification. And we hear all the twisted world. This is all, war is peace. By which I mean, this is from 1984, of course, by George Orwell, by which is meant basically that domestic peace is maintained through foreign war and through perceiving a threat coming from some external force to the country. And where if you don't have war, then people start bickering within each other and fighting each other and going on strike and demonstrating and shouting in Parliament. But when you have a nice war, then everybody is like, well, we're all united, and we're all conservatives, and we're all defending the homeland from external threats. So war is peace. I mean, that's the final kind of sort of conclusion there. Um, so we all know about that one. And there's another list of characteristics here, which is listed under fire, under the twisted world of twisted thinking. This punishment will hurt me more than it will hurt you. To which the reply is, surely, I very much doubt that. And if it really hurts you to punish me more than it hurts me, then why do it? Why hurt yourself in order to correct my behavior through some kind of destructive punishment? So that's what I meant like that. And there's very other sort of things that we sort of, I'm a god in a world of dog. This is perhaps a problem with Gnosticism, is that you feel that you are, a soul, a misunderstood soul, a god, surrounded by idiots and NPCs, which is a gaming reference, people that don't have souls and people that are mean and horrible and vicious and vile. and are like dogs. And but of course, there is a sort of sense that some Gnostics have this sense, which means that it can go either way. You can either be nice to the dogs around you because you're a god, or you can kick the dogs around you because you're a god. So basically, it would all depend on how doggish the people around you are being, whether you kick them or pat them in a condescending sort of way. But basically, you're wrong because either none of us are God, or we're all God, or we're all soul, or none of us are soul. And if we are sinners, well, there's another paradox. We are both sinners and we are both soul. Sin means not to we miss the mark, so we're all missing the mark all the time. We're all missing our not fulfilling our potential from day to day all the time. But we're also like stars of great potential all the time, and we could achieve great things or not achieve anything. We could just be in a sort of Zen meditation and good for nothing. That is good for nothing, as good as it's serving our best interests by doing nothing. In fact, in a sort of Taoist kind of way there. So I have a list of here of the fire, the twisted world aspects of the twisted world, which you can meditate. I can't do all of them. Then finally, we have water, which is the purification of baptism. We're baptized in a world loving, not world loving as in worldliness, worldly, but creating a loving world. And we have a list of things. One of the best things I like is everyone is of equal value to what is you and yours. So basically, if you love everybody else's children as much as you love your own children, there will be peace. There will be love. It's when you think your children count for more than anyone else's, that's when you're going to start fighting people and hating people and scapegoating people and etc. etc. So the list of things like generosity and understanding, you don't condone bad behavior, but you understand it, which helps to be more protective, but protectiveness is good as well. And you're looking at the welfare of all rather than the selfish welfare. And we have here the sort of altruistic, sort of utopian kind of thing. Humility we spelt wrong, uh, and generosity. All the good stuff is here. In fact, it's so good that some Gnostics say this couldn't come from this world. All these things with characteristics that I've listed here, have actually come from another world. They've come from the world of transcendence, the world from God, the transcendent God, and not from the demiurge, because the demiurge is twisted and twisted basically, and we respond either by being practical or by being impractical, or by being in a fantasy world. To get away from the twisted world that we have built around us and that is part and built into the very substance of reality. Reality is twisted, is paradoxical, is against us all the time. And from the jump, basically, we are nobbled, if you like, angels with feet of clay, kind of thing. So basically, what are we to make of all this? Well, all this is part of this world, isn't it? We talk about the good, bad, and ugly, the twisted, the loving, the if only, and the practical, and the grounded. These are all things that are part of this world. I mean, from my own psychological point of view, I need to be more grounded instead of intellectual. And I need to get away from this if only world and ground myself into the practical world on one hand and onto a loving world onto another. And to try and partition myself, as it were, from the twisted thinking that is part of human nature. And so, you know, I like the one about we all rise together. Yeah, that's based on capitalism. It means that we all have the equal opportunity, basically, to get rich and famous, and the field is level playing field. It's actually not true. People are born into very different situations, and some people have advantage, and other people have disadvantage. And you know, you can't level you don't have a level playing field, which is why we're not all ships that are going to rise together. We're all going to rise at different rates, different and arrive at different places. You know, as far as self-actualization is concerned. But I mean, that's not to say you can't achieve self-actualization by being a dustman or by being a multimillionaire. And some multimillionaires have not actually achieved self-actualization, which is why they live in a fantasy, if only world, and are furious and frustrated and forlorn and all the rest of it with their lives, even though they materially are very, very successfully doing what they're supposed to be doing in life. And then they kind of give up and become Zen Buddhists instead, which would be the much more healthy thing to do, really, from the point of view of soul. So I think I've shown that the situation is quite complex, and it's not just a simple thing of my soul is trapped in this body, my soul is trapped in this world. Um, why don't I just commit suicide and be done with it all? Because it's more complex than that. And indeed, I suppose in the end, introduce thinking about ether, the fifth element. I suppose if one takes a sort of long, cool, objective look at the whole picture that I've painted here, and you kind of have insight into into where you are. So you can imagine you're looking at everything, and you're looking at everything, and then you're thinking to myself, where am I in this picture? Am I too much in the if only world? Am I too much in the twisted world, try to justify my twistiness? Am I too much in the practical world, too grounded perhaps, and not and being too grounded, almost creating a sort of obsessive fantasy world out of trying to be grounded all the time, and denying the twisted world that is around me. Am I too much in the love world? As a sort of hippie kind of utopian person that is trying to escape their own twisted psychology or their own denying things, and also going back to I know what is best for you. You sort of think, oh, I have this utopian vision of the world, and everybody should adhere to it, and if they don't, I'll hit them. Which is sort of the communist kind of way, isn't it? We should all be good socialists, scientific socialists, and if we're not, there's something wrong with us, which there is sort of it really, but there is something wrong with us because we're selfish, 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 hardwired to be selfish, I suppose. So you can be too much on the lovey-dovey, hippie utopian denying side, and you're just sort of you're heading towards a fall personally and collectively because of that, and you're sort of too woke. And you're too politically correct, and you just become a complete raving lunatic as a result of being sort of wrapped up in your own fanatical utopian ideas of what love is and what you think love should be for everybody else. So you can look at the whole picture and you can say, where am I at? And I mean, usually all of us we're sort of in the middle, aren't we? We're kind of a bit twisted, a bit if only, a bit practical, and a bit and a bit loving. We're a bit loving, perhaps not loving enough. We're a bit in the fantasy world. We're a bit grounded, and we're sort of a bit twisted as well. And I suppose basically you kind of look for a balance, but the main thing is you have insight. You look into your life. You introspect into your consciousness or into your life situation. You say, where am I at? You know, I'm somewhere, but maybe I'm sort of too much somewhere, and I need to step back and look at my life. And am I too in the fantasy world? Am I too practical, or do I need to be more grounded, or do I need to be even perhaps more in a fantasy world? I don't think you need to be more twisted than you already are. Although I suppose if you're a nun, becoming a part-time prostitute would be quite good to know what prostitutes feel like, rather than sort of saying, sex workers are bad people because, and I'm a nun, so I should know. That's not the way to do it. But I don't think nuns have to become sex workers necessarily in order to experience the other side of the coin, as it were. Anyway, which is some people have suggested that nuns should do this, or monks or priests. They should become bad people and do lots of wicked libertarian things in order to know what it's like to sin boldly. But I think surely you can have an imagination. You don't have to go that far in order to be a non-judgmental person. You can just stop being a judgmental person. Uh, you know, uh, uh, um, Not as other people do. And all this. You have to kind of recognize that you're in your own way. You are as sinful as a sex worker in many ways. And I mean, Christians do recognize that, but usually only on Sundays, and then they forget for the rest of the week, unfortunately. And sometimes, we can see what love is on a Sunday, and then we forget for Monday, for the rest of the week, we forget what love is, and we go back to being twisted, and we go back to being in an if-only world, and we even, forget to be grounded. As we wallow in self pity or delusion or whatever. No, I think that the fifth element is insight. The fifth element is occasionally, or even quite a lot of the time, asking yourself, "Am I grounded? Am I building a fantasy world? Do I really like the virtual world I'm building? Am I being loving enough? Am I buying into the twisted nature of human psychology?" And you need to ask these questions. It's asking the right questions before you can get the right answers. And that you need some self honesty here, because you need to say, well, am I really being deluded? Am I really not being grounded enough? Am I really not loving enough? Am I really just becoming twisted, like the twisted roots of human nature? And these are important questions to ask every so once, and there are different levels of asking. Sometimes, the questions can be superficial. Sometimes you can look at your life on a day-to-day basis and say, "Am I being loving enough?" And sometimes you have to ask the questions at a very deep level. Is my whole life at the moment being, not being grounded enough or not being loving enough? And you really have to take a long look at the whole thing, at the whole structure of it. So that's really sort of the moral we can draw from this analysis of the four worlds that comprise Gnosticism. And again, it comes back to: is this world a schoolroom? Is it a correction facility? Is it a prison? Is it a torture chamber? And I suppose, in a way, perhaps it's more of a correction facility than a torture chamber. But on the other hand, if Soul hasn't done anything wrong, if you haven't done anything wrong to be in this situation, and people say you haven't, then surely it's a torture chamber where people are torturing you, and you haven't done anything wrong. You haven't done anything. You haven't been a bad person. You're just a person being tortured by people who like torturing other people. And when you get out of that chamber, you leave behind these people that like torturing other people for fun. Um, or is it a schoolroom where you're actually here to learn something, and to be grounded and to practice and to become and to have the goal of becoming perfect anyway? And maybe that's a kind of better way of looking at the world. I really don't know. I mean, I think Gnosticism asks more questions than it answers, to be perfectly frank with you. And if you're looking for easy answers, I don't think Gnosticism is really the religious philosophy for you. And you're better off going for Buddhism, really, and try to stay clear of organized religion as far as you possibly can with its political, sexual power overturns. Or if you can. Anyway, so I think I'll leave it there. I always fall apart towards the end of these presentations and don't know what I'm saying in the end, because I'm do live too much in my mind and are not grounded. But I'm going to go out and do some gardening now, and do some weeding, and then I shall be a happy chappy.